When I pulled up to my parents' house in Shreveport that Sunday afternoon, after flying back from New York, the first thing I heard through the open door was my 8-year-old son's desperate sobbing. This wasn't tantrum crying. It was pure fear, the kind that stops your heart. I bolted inside and found Ethan curled into a ball on the couch, arms clutched tight around his body, face buried in a pillow. He flinched hard at the sound of a man's voice from the TV, shrinking smaller like he wanted to disappear. I dropped everything and knelt down, pulling him into my arms. "Ethan, honey, Mommy's here. What happened?" His little voice broke through the tears, barely audible. "Grandpa. He got really mad at my clothes." That's when I noticed the oversized shirt he had on, and the torn pieces of his favorite t-shirt and shorts stuffed underneath, ripped at the shoulders and sleeves, like someone had grabbed and pulled hard. He clung to me, shaking as the sobs came harder. My dad had ripped the clothes right off my son to teach him a lesson. Ethan had cried and begged him to stop. My mom not only didn't protect her grandson, she even told him, "You need to be taught a lesson." And then my grandfather showed up and said just one sentence. Instantly, my parents panicked. Before I dive into the full story and what came next, that changed everything forever, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're feeling this already, smash that like button to show some support, subscribe, so you don't miss the next one, and let me know in the comments what you'd do in my shoes. Hey everyone, I'm Marissa Bowen, a 34-year-old single mom living in Seattle, Washington. But I never imagined that weekend, which was supposed to be carefree and full of good memories, would turn into something that would change my family forever. It all started the Friday before last when I boarded a flight alone to New York City for my high school reunion. It was a milestone event, 15 years since graduation, and I'd been excited about it for months. Friends I'd lost touch with were flying in from all over, and there were plans for dinners, walks down memory lane, and catching up on everything we'd missed. The itinerary looked perfect, and I didn't want to skip it. But with the long cross-country flight and a packed schedule, bringing Ethan along didn't make sense. He was only 8, and dragging him through airports and crowded events would have been exhausting for both of us. So I made the call to leave him at my parents' place in Shreveport, Louisiana. It wasn't the first time. He'd spent weekends there before, and he always came back full of stories about the fun he'd had. The main draw for him was his Aunt Ashley, my younger sister, who still lived at home with Mom and Dad. At 30, she had a flexible job and loved playing the cool aunt, video games, late-night movies, homemade treats. Ethan adored her, and seeing them together always warmed my heart. I told myself it would be just 2 nights, a short break for me, and quality time with grandparents for him. Nothing could go wrong in 48 hours. Right. Looking back, I should have listened more closely to the warnings from my friends. Over the years, they'd pointed out how my dad Gregory held on to very traditional ideas about parenting. He believed in strict rules, firm discipline, and clear expectations, especially for boys. Small things could set him off. Manners at the table, how loud kids played, or even what they wore. His comments about Ethan's style had been building for a while. Gregory would frown at the loose, colorful clothes I bought for Ethan, things designed for active kids in warm weather. He'd mutter that they looked too casual, too revealing for running around, or not tough enough for a growing boy. "Boys should dress like boys," he'd say, shaking his head at a pair of bright shorts or a graphic tee. I usually rolled my eyes and moved on, figuring it was just his generation talking. He grew up in a different era after all. There was that one barbecue last summer where he made a remark in front of the whole family. Ethan was wearing a tank top because it was scorching hot, and Gregory grumbled loudly. "Back in my day, we didn't parade around half-dressed like that." Then he added, half laughing, "If Grandpa Walter had seen us trying that, he'd have set us straight quick." Everyone chuckled awkwardly, but I caught the undertone. Grandpa Walter, my dad's father, was the family patriarch, a retired military man in his 80s, now living independently, but still respected by everyone. His word had always carried weight, and Dad often referenced him when justifying his own views. I brushed it aside that day, too, distracting Ethan with dessert. By Friday evening, I was focused on logistics. I packed Ethan's overnight bag carefully, his favorite pajamas, a couple of changes of clothes, including those comfy shorts and superhero t-shirts for the humid Louisiana heat. His tablet loaded with games and a few toys to keep him occupied. We arrived at my parents' house just as the sun was setting. Ethan bolted from the car before I could even turn off the engine, backpack bouncing. Ashley flung open the door, arms wide. "There's my favorite nephew!" she yelled, lifting him in a spinning hug. Ethan laughed delightedly, wrapping his arms around her neck. Mom, Diane, appeared behind her, smiling warmly from the hallway, apron still on from whatever she was cooking. She pulled me into a quick embrace, smelling like fresh herbs and home. "We've got everything ready for him," she assured me. Dad sat in his recliner in the living room, remote in hand, glancing up from the evening news. He gave Ethan a nod and a gruff, "Come here, kid," motioning him over for a brief shoulder squeeze. No big fuss, but that was Dad's way. I crouched down to Ethan's eye level on the porch, smoothing his hair. "Be good for Grandma and Grandpa, okay? Listen to them and have fun with Aunt Ashley." He nodded eagerly, already eyeing the living room. "I'll call you tomorrow morning," I promised, kissing his forehead. As I drove away, he stood on the steps, waving wildly alongside Ashley. Mom hovering with a smile. The airport run went smooth, and soon I was in the air heading east. The reunion kicked off that night with a casual meetup at a rooftop bar overlooking the city lights. Old classmates poured in, hugs and shouts echoing everywhere. Stories flowed as freely as the drinks. Who got married, who had kids, career changes, funny memories from senior year. I felt lighter than I had in ages, laughing until my cheeks hurt. Saturday morning brought a slight hangover but tons of excitement. I grabbed coffee with a small group, then headed back to my hotel to freshen up. Around 10 as planned, I video called home. Ethan answered right away, his face lighting up the screen. He was on the floor, surrounded by controllers and snacks. "Mom, we're playing racing games and I just won 3 in a row against Grandpa." His energy was infectious. In the background, I could see the familiar living room. Dad's recliner, Mom's knickknacks on the shelves. Dad leaned over Ethan's shoulder, messing up his hair playfully. "Good job, buddy," he said. Ethan beamed, turning the camera to show his high score. He had on the superhero t-shirt I'd packed, the one with the bold graphics paired with those light shorts. Ideal for the sticky heat. Everything looked normal, relaxed. Then Dad's face filled more of the frame as he sat down beside Ethan. His tone was light, but there was that familiar firmness underneath. "Don't worry too much about us here," he told me. "Over at this house, I make sure things stay proper. No running around in those skimpy outfits you sent him in." He chuckled like it was a joke, but his eyes were serious. Ethan's smile dipped for a split second. He looked down at his lap, fiddling with the controller, then back up with a smaller grin. "It's okay, Mom. We're having fun." I felt a tiny twinge, but pushed it down. "Dad, come on. It's just kid clothes for summer. Let him be comfy in the heat." He shrugged it off. Mom appeared then, leaning in with a plate. "Pancakes are ready. Extra chocolate chips for Ethan." That shifted the mood quick. Ethan dove into describing the stack waiting for him, and we talked about his afternoon plans. Maybe swinging in the yard or a movie marathon with Ashley. By the time we said goodbye, he was bouncing again, promising to win more races. I ended the call and dove back into the reunion activities. The day flew by in a whirlwind: brunch with the old crew, a walk through our former school grounds, group photos that had everyone posing ridiculously. Evening brought a formal dinner, speeches and dancing that lasted until the venue closed. I crashed, exhausted but happy, texting Mom a good night and getting back a cute photo of Ethan tucked in on the couch, peaceful as ever. Sunday arrived too soon. I packed up, checked out, and caught my flight west. As the plane climbed, I flipped through reunion pics on my phone, already planning which ones to show Ethan. I was eager to hear his weekend tales, scoop him up, and head home to Seattle. Little did I know how wrong that video call moment had been. That brief flicker in his expression when Dad spoke. If only I'd probed deeper instead of dismissing it as harmless teasing. Saturday afternoon at my parents' house started out quiet enough. Ethan had spent the morning inside playing video games with Dad, just like he'd bragged about during our call. After lunch, Mom's homemade grilled cheese and tomato soup, he asked if he could go out back to run around. The yard was his favorite spot there, a big grassy area with an old swing set Ashley had helped repaint last year, plus plenty of room to kick a ball or chase butterflies. The Louisiana heat was already building humid and thick even in the shade. Ethan changed into the light shorts and superhero t-shirt I'd packed specifically for days like this. Breathable fabric, bright colors he loved, perfect for staying cool while being active. He dashed outside with a soccer ball under his arm, shouting back that he'd show Grandpa his new tricks later. From the kitchen window, Mom watched him with a soft smile, commenting on how much he'd grown since spring. Ashley lounged on the porch steps with her phone, occasionally cheering when Ethan did a fancy kick. Dad was in his recliner again, flipping channels between golf and local news, sipping iced tea. Everything seemed peaceful, the kind of lazy weekend afternoon I'd pictured when dropping him off. Ethan played hard for a while, dribbling the ball around imaginary opponents, narrating his own commentary in that excited voice kids have when they're lost in make-believe. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he didn't care. He was in his element. Eventually, Dad stepped out onto the back porch, calling Ethan over in that deep, commanding tone he used when he wanted attention right away. "Ethan, come here a minute." Ethan trotted up, ball tucked under his arm, cheeks flushed from running. "Yes, Grandpa." Dad stood there with arms crossed, eyeing him up and down. His gaze lingered on the shorts riding mid-thigh and the sleeveless cut of the t-shirt from all the movement. "What's with this getup?" Dad asked, voice low but sharp. "You're running around half-dressed. Those shorts are way too short, too revealing. And that shirt? It's flapping everywhere. Doesn't look respectable, especially in my house." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at himself. "But Mom packed these. They're for playing outside when it's hot." Dad's face hardened. "I don't care what your mom packed. In this house we dress proper. You show respect for adults by not looking like you're headed to the beach." Ethan tried again, voice small. "It's just clothes, Grandpa. They're comfortable." That pushed Dad over. He stepped forward, grabbing the collar of the t-shirt with one hand. "Comfortable. This isn't about comfort, it's about decency." With a quick yank, he tore the fabric from the shoulder seam downward, the rip loud in the quiet yard. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "Grandpa!" Dad didn't stop, switching to the other sleeve and pulling hard until that side tore open too, threads popping as the material gave way. Ethan stumbled back, panic rising. "Grandpa, stop. Please stop." Tears welled up instantly as he tried to pull away, arms flailing to protect the shirt he loved. Mom heard the commotion from the kitchen and hurried to the door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She froze at the sight, mouth opening, but no words coming out at first. "Greg," she said softly, almost a whisper. "That's enough." But she stayed in the doorway, hands twisting the towel, not moving closer. Ashley, hearing the noise, came around from the front, phone still in hand. She took in the scene, Dad holding the now ruined shirt, Ethan crying. And instead of helping, she smirked. "See, that's what happens when you wear stuff that looks girly. Told you those clothes were ridiculous." Her tone was mocking, like she was proving a point she'd made before. Dad kept a firm grip on Ethan's shoulder, not letting him bolt. "Boy, you listen to me. You don't argue with grown-ups. This is what happens when you don't dress right and then talk back." Ethan was full-on sobbing now, chest heaving, trying to twist free but too small to break the hold. "Please, Grandpa. It hurts. Stop." His voice cracked, face red and streaked with tears. Dad held him a moment longer until the struggling slowed from exhaustion, then released with a shove toward the door. "Go upstairs and change into something decent right now, and stay in your room till you calm down." Ethan stumbled inside, clutching the torn pieces to his chest, head down as he passed Mom. She reached out a hand but pulled it back, murmuring, "It's okay, honey," too quietly for him to hear over his cries. He ran up the stairs, door slamming behind him. Dad brushed his hands together like he'd finished a chore, walking back to his chair. Mom followed slowly, looking unsettled but saying nothing. Ashley trailed behind, still chuckling under her breath. Once inside, Dad settled into the recliner again, picking up his tea. "I had to do it," he said matter-of-factly to Mom as she hovered nearby. Kids getting too soft, too spoiled. Marissa lets him wear whatever, no boundaries. If I don't step in, he'll turn out with no respect. Mom nodded faintly, busying herself at the sink. You're right, Greg. He needs to learn. But her voice lacked conviction, hands shaking slightly as she rinsed a glass. Ashley dropped onto the couch, scrolling her phone. Exactly. She babies him too much. That shirt was embarrassing anyway. Good riddance. Dad grunted approval. See, even Ashley gets it. Boy needs a firm hand or he'll walk all over everyone. I just taught him a lesson he'll remember. Actions have consequences when you disregard rules in this house. They moved on to talking about dinner plans as if the yelling and tears hadn't happened. Upstairs, Ethan curled on the guest bed, hugging his knees, the ruined shirt balled up beside him. He cried until his throat hurt, confused and scared, wondering why Grandpa had gotten so mad over clothes. The afternoon dragged on with him staying quiet in the room, afraid to come down. Mom brought a snack later, patting his head awkwardly. It's over now. Come eat when you're ready. But he wasn't. Ashley poked her head in once, teasing, better pick something boring next time, before laughing and leaving. Dad never checked on him. By evening, the house returned to its normal rhythm. TV on low, Mom prepping food, Ashley chatting about her day. No one mentioned the incident again, like it was just another discipline moment. Ethan eventually changed into long pants and a plain shirt from his bag, coming down only for dinner. He ate silently, eyes down, barely touching his plate. Dad acted like everything was fine, asking about school, as if nothing had shattered the day. Ethan answered in monosyllables, retreating back upstairs soon after. The rest of the night passed with movies in the living room, but Ethan begged off early, saying he was tired. He lay awake a long time, replaying the ripping sound and the fear in his chest. Meanwhile, I was across the country wrapping up another reunion event, completely unaware. Sunday afternoon, I arrived at my parents' house in Shreveport to pick up Ethan after my flight back from the reunion. I was tired from travel, but excited to see him, expecting the usual happy rush to the door. Instead, when I knocked, Mom opened it slowly, her face tense, eyes darting away from mine. She stepped aside without a word, letting me in. The house felt strangely quiet. I called Ethan's name as I walked toward the living room. He was there on the couch, knees drawn up, wearing one of Dad's old baggy shirts that hung to his knees. His eyes were swollen, cheeks blotchy, and he didn't run to me. He just sat frozen, staring at the floor. My heart sank instantly. I dropped my bag and knelt in front of him. Hey, sweetheart. Mommy's home? He looked up then, eyes filling again, and slid into my arms. I held him close, feeling his small body still rigid with whatever had happened. What's going on, baby? Tell me. His voice came out a whisper against my shoulder. Grandpa angry. He tore my shirt. I froze, pulled back just enough to see his face. Tore your shirt. Show me. He pointed shakily to the side of the couch where his favorite superhero t-shirt and shorts lay in a pile, seams ripped open at the shoulders and sleeves. The tears were deliberate fabric pulled apart forcefully. I picked up the pieces, fingers tracing the jagged edges. My stomach twisted. I stood, keeping one arm around Ethan, and turned to the room. Dad was in his recliner, TV on low, acting like nothing was wrong. Mom lingered in the doorway, twisting her hands. Ashley appeared at the top of the stairs, watching. I faced Dad directly. What did you do to my son? He muted the game, leaning back. I taught him a lesson. His clothes were inappropriate, too short, too loose. He needed to learn respect for how he presents himself in this house. Ethan pressed closer to me. You tore his clothes because you didn't like them. He argued when I told him to change, so I made sure he understood. Mom spoke up softly. It's not as bad as it sounds, honey. He was okay after. I turned to her. Okay? Look at him. Ashley came down the stairs. You're overreacting. You've let him wear whatever he wants since he was tiny. No wonder he doesn't know boundaries. I couldn't believe the words coming out. So grabbing and ripping his shirt is a boundary now. Dad shrugged. It got the message across. He'll remember next time. I felt the anger rising, hot and sharp. He was scared. He shouldn't be scared here. Mom tried again. We're his grandparents. We correct him when needed. Ashley added. Yeah, and you spoil him rotten. This is what happens. I looked at Ethan, his face buried in my side. Apologized to him. Now. Dad's expression hardened. Not going to happen. He needed it, and that's that. Mom pleaded. Please, let's not fight. He's fine. Ashley crossed her arms. You're turning this into something it's not. The room grew heavier with every word. No remorse. No acknowledgement that it was wrong. Just excuses and blame shifted to me. I guided Ethan to sit safely on the couch behind me, shielding him. My voice stayed level, but inside, I was done. You all think this is normal. Dad waved a hand. Family disciplines family. End of story. Mom nodded along, though her eyes were wet. Ashley smirked. Exactly. Drop the act. I stared at them. Dad defiant, Mom avoiding, Ashley dismissive. No one was going to admit fault. The silence stretched thick and ugly. Ethan's breathing was the only sound from behind me. I kept my hand on his knee.